understand that your journey in this industry is not going to look like anyone else's. So don't compare. Don't compare your work. Don't compare your journey, because you'll stay frustrated and discouraged if you do.
If you're looking for acting tips, industry insights, interviews, or just life lessons, you're at the right place. She is an award-winning TV writer, best-selling author, film, television, and live event producer, director, visual artist, inspirational speaker, stand-up comedian, mother and grandmother, and child of God. Please help me welcome Faye Griffin. So let's talk about just collaborating as a writer in general.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times new writers are so eager to write that they give away their material, or they start the process without knowing what to ask for, how to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Once you left In Living Color and were collaborating, what were a few things that you learned as a writer?
The biggest lesson is that you must be in a partnership that is equitable in terms of, is that other writer, do we share enough things in common? I'm not saying you need to have a clone of yourself, because that kind of defeats the purpose of collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
You want someone that has maybe divergent ideas or whatever, that's what keeps it edgy and creative and all of that. But on a personal level, there's got to be enough commonality in purpose. Why are you writing? Why do you care about this project? Your values, your mores, what is...
Mm-hmm.
Your integrity level, all of those things, so that when the stuff hits the fan, and it will hit the fan, there's a bond that will keep that partnership working. I was thrown together when Sonia and I decided to go in different directions, and we disbanded our partnership. I was with APA at that time. They tried to package me with a guy that was so far away from anything that's like me and what I care about in terms of material. It was painful. We lasted 2 weeks, and then I was like, that's a wrap. That is a wrap. Not that he wasn't funny or talented or anything, but he had this desperation about him. It was all about the money. He wanted to be famous, all this stuff. I just want to feed my kids. I'm just trying to feed my kids. That's all I'm trying, and go home. That's really all I'm trying to do. So when it comes to collaboration, the number one thing I would say is to make sure that that partnership is viable, that it's really viable. Number two, be open. Be open to exchange ideas and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And listen. We, as storytellers, we see it in our heads. We
Right.
know what we want it to look and sound like and all of that. But be open to the other person's opinion. They may call you, show you something that you never even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of it. There's a controversy going on with Tyler Perry right now about him going on record saying that he writes all of his stuff.
Which he does not.
Which he does not.
Yes.
Yes, we do know that.
And he doesn't give credit to the writers.
No.
A lot of those writers that he does use, or I've been told by writers that he has used,
Mm-hmm.
There's no opportunity for them, if they're non-union, to go union, because they don't get a contract.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have anything to show for it, which is why I'm talking collaboration, because that's a part of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
If I come to work for you, are you giving me a contract? What am I getting out of the deal?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for writers to have that first. If the project does very well, and you have not put it down on paper what your percentages or what your fee is going to be, or what, down the line, will you get residuals? Will you get a point? Will you get this? Will you get that?
Right.
If you have not done the paperwork first, you're...
Can I give you a prime example that happened to me of doing what we call a handshake deal?
Yes. Don't ever do handshake
Don't
deals.
ever do a handshake deal.
Okay, go ahead.
Ever. There's a high-profile comedian that I wrote for and with on and off for nigh on 15 years. And if you know me, you know who it is, Steve Harvey. And I only had a contract with Steve like in the early years on certain projects. He came to me and he says, there's this thing I want to do, this concert film I want to do. come on and write with me. I'll bring you down to Texas to the ranch. We'll write, da-da-da. Did it on handshake. Never got a check. Continued to work with him on other projects that were related to BET. Because I was working for and with BET, but it was so painful. And then one day I got called into a meeting with him, and he's like, "What's wrong with you? Can I talk to you? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I never got paid for this project." And he turned to his manager at the time, was Sean McDonald, and said, "Shawnee Mac, T-Faye, like," and I could tell he knew I hadn't got paid. Don't be trying to pretend like you don't know. He says to Shawnee Mac, to Rashawn, he says, "Pay her what's fair." Now this is a concert film that went on DVD. It had a limited release theatrically. It's on home, video, DVD, whatever. I know that thing made money. It's still making money. They wrote me a check for $2,000. That's what they thought was fair. Had I went to the book, WGBA book, and said, "Well, at least the minimum. Give me, Writers Guild minimum. We'll work with that." I would have been happy even with that. But for $2,000, and this thing is still selling. So boys and girls, take a lesson from Auntie Tay. Do not do handshake deals. Get it on paper. And if at all possible, do only Guild signatory shows.
And even if it's not Guild, find out what the Guild is.
It's online.
What the base is, and ask for the base.
Yeah, base plus 10.
That's right, because you got to pay your reps.
Yeah.
I would also say, if it's your first project or your second project, don't sweat it, because this is where you learn stuff. This is where you learn not to take it anymore. I think everybody's got to go through that one bad deal to say, "I will never do this again." But after your first or second thing, shut it down.
Shut it down.
No more freebies. Make people pay you, and get it first. Make sure that it is decided when you first book that job, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So that moving forward, I agreed to do this for $200. So I'm going to stay committed because I agreed to do it, because your word has to be your bond.
Absolutely.
And then after that, you go, "You know what? I put in 2 months for $200. I can't ever do that again." And the more you know about what the going rate is, the least likely people are going to jack you off of your projects. A lot of times, especially for people of color, since we don't get a lot of opportunities, we aren't given all those wonderful deals and stuff, and then we're trying to make stuff ourselves. We will undersell ourselves
every time. We
will undersell other people, and you have to start with something. Look, if someone says to me, "I'm starting this project and all I can pay you is $10, I get to decide if I'm going to go for the $10, because they've given it to me in the front. They've said, "This is what it is." There's no confusing that.
Right.
But when you say, "Oh, I'll pay you," and they don't tell you what it is, and you finish the project, and then they come back and they give you $2.50, that's an insult, because
you've set yourself up
right
for that.
I know who you are now.
What they say, first time shame on you, second time
It's
shame on me.
not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen again.
Or someone who hires you and then says, "Oh, we decided not to pay you."
That was my line of demarcation. That is the day that Faye Griffin grew up in this industry and said, "Oh, heck no, this will never happen again." And so a lot of times people will come to me and they want me to do something for them, and here is my standard thing. It is X amount of dollars, and it is 35% non-refundable deposit up front. Period. Done. We're done. And if you can't do that, I can't help you. I won't do it without a non-refundable deposit. You're going to pay me one way or the other. If you dump out of the project, whatever, that's on you. But I got at least my 35%. Some people 50% if I know their history. You have to be willing to walk away from the table. Once you understand what you bring to it, you have to be brave enough, courageous enough to walk away from it. There's a guy that does these podcasts called Purpose and Profitability. His name is Robert Fukui, and Robert is a strong advocate for pricing yourself, at the value, at your value, determining what your value is, and never undercutting that, and be willing to walk away. And when I started doing that, I found that I had more work more work of worth because I'm not just some hack.
Right.
They know when you hire me, you know what you're getting. I like to believe that I have a really good reputation in this business. I've only quit 2 jobs in my entire, well, 3, whatever. but in a 30-year career, and I have never missed a deadline. You know, if you've given me a reasonable deadline or we've negotiated a reasonable deadline, I hit it every time. So I think I've established that when you hire me, when I come to the table, I'm bringing you a lot. I'm bringing you experience. I'm bringing you expertise. I'm bringing you skill. I'm bringing you integrity. And I'm going to leave you with some value. All I'm asking is that you value me financially. And if you cannot do it, there's a difference between cannot do it and won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't deal with you if you just won't do it. And it's easy to you know, kind of figure out who those people are. But there are some people that just can't. You know, I'm new, this is my first film, it's a short, we don't have it. I get it. Let me introduce you to a young, hungry writer.
Exactly.
Who can help you, because
Exactly.
I cannot.
You not only write for television, you've written some books, you've written for comedians, you have also written for award shows.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find out about that because that's another skill set unto its own.
It is. It's definitely become what I think I'm most known for in this incarnation of my career. Is kind of the queen of award shows. I mean, my dream is to write either on the Oscars. In fact, one of my early mentors and role models was Rita Cash, and Rita Cash, to my knowledge, was the first, and up until the time Whoopi wrote the year she hosted, was the only black female to ever write on the Oscars.
Wow.
Rita Cash. And so I worked with Rita on the Essence Awards, the old
Was that
Essence
the
Awards.
first time you worked on an award show?
It was the first time I worked on an award show, but I wasn't a writer. One of the skills that I had acquired over the years was clip clearance and licensing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you girl, trust.
Oh, no.
I can clear some clips now.
Okay.
I don't do music clearance. That's a whole other animal. But if you need some clips for something you're doing and it needs to be licensed, I got you, girl.
Okay, this is good to know.
Yes.
Because that's a hard job.
That's a hard job.
Yes,
it's a hard job. But I was mentored by Giselle Sanchez Rochet, who taught me how to do it. And so she was the lead clip clearance and segment producer on the Essence Awards. She brought me in as her second. So I got to observe Rita, right, and Kefra Burns, who was the other writer on the show, who's Susan Taylor's husband, who's an incredible writer. Oh, Kefra's, they're both amazing. But they wrote with such power and dignity, and they were very linear in how they wrote, and very visual, and there was something about their style of writing that fascinated me. And so what was my first show? I don't remember what my first award show, but I've done Black Girls Rock a couple of times. I've done the Trumpet Awards 3 times, the Gracies.
What are the Gracies?
The Gracies Awards is an award show that honors the accomplishments of women in journalism.
Oh, and the Trumpet Awards are?
The Trumpet Awards is another, it's kind of like, it's almost like the Image Awards. It's by a black organization out of Atlanta, Miss Zernona Clayton, who actually marched with Dr. King. And they, again, acknowledge the achievements and accomplishments of African Americans or people who have roots in civil rights, or who are advocates for civil rights and human rights and that kind of thing. Really heady stuff for somebody who writes jokes, but because I have a life and I have a diversified creative portfolio. But it definitely is a very specific type of writing.
Do you know when you get it who the presenters are going to be, or you sketch something out and then when they come you tweak it?
It is. That's another. We talked about collaboration earlier. That's definitely a collaborative effort. Case in point, let's use Black Girls Rock. Usually by the time I would get to Black Girls Rock, they already know who's hosting. They already kind of know who they want to present in certain areas. I might come to the table with certain ideas. I mean, Black Girls Rock, I wasn't the only writer. I had the privilege of writing with Dream Hampton. Dream Hampton is the creator and executive producer of Surviving R. Kelly. She's a force.
Okay.
So I got a chance to write with Dream on a couple of Black Girls Rock. But generally, it's kind of an ongoing process, depending on what their production schedule is like, who's available, that kind of thing. What I always try to do, and what I'm known for, is writing in the voice of the person who's presenting. So it's not some cookie cutter
Bland
stop
right.
stuff. I write to the voice. I write to their sensibility. I write to their sense of humor if necessary. Or sometimes I'll pull them totally out, like Donnie Cochran. I had an opportunity to write for Mr. Cochran on the Trumpet Awards. He was presenting to Vernon Jordan. So I had Mr. Cochran. You think he's going to come out and be very stoic and whatever. And he goes, back in a time when the blackest thing in the conference room was the coffee, got a huge laugh. Vernon Jordan, da 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 da, and it got a huge laugh for him. And I watched, it was so great. I watched his shoulders relax when he got that laugh. So it's like being conscious of who you're working with and giving them something that's going to evoke more confidence in them, you know, and show them in their best light. Tony Goldwyn told me my writing was exquisite.
Oh, how lovely. We love Tony Goldwyn.
We love Tony Goldwyn.
So you've done a few workshops, like for the Writers Guild, also Irma Bombeck's humor camp,
Writers Conference,
the conference. Were they the same workshop, or you did different workshops for each one?
I did different ones, because it's a different audience. Like for Irma Bombeck, which is only every other year, I taught a class.
And Irma Bombeck was a humorist, writer. She passed away from cancer.
Yeah, from cancer. She was the what do you call it, the godmother of humor writers. I devised a workshop to help people who wanted to write inspirational humor. My first book, Morning Manna, which is a devotional, which is very inspirational, but it's also very funny. So I taught a workshop based on that. The workshop that I taught at the Writers Guild was it was a survey of comedic genres. It was in conjunction with a film festival, I think the African American Film Festival.
Okay.
And so these were film students. And so I taught them we talked about the genres, we talked about the literary devices, different types of things that go into making something funny.
Comedy writing is one of the hardest things to do as far as a writer goes.
It's the hardest.
Because you got to be funny. You can't just think you're funny, but not be funny. So when you write something that is, you know, it's crafted for comedy, but it's not quite there, how do you punch it up? What is your approach to it?
To making a joke better?
Yes.
Well, the first thing you have to know that comedy is very subjective, and so what whoever's giving you the note, you know what, this isn't quite it, I don't really think this is funny, I don't think our audience will get it, then you have to really go back and think about that audience and then try to come at it at a different, what did I miss? If I'm doing a show for a church, and this is like a really base example, and the pastor comes and goes, well, you used profanity in it, it's for a church. Well, obviously you go back and go, okay, we'll take the profanity in it and still make it funny. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You just have to really know who
the audience is.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it as funny as you want it, do you outsource that?
It's
that
possible.
Joke?
It's possible.
Because I know that sometimes writers will have another writer tweak the jokes, punch up the jokes. So
absolutely, it's the collaboration when it comes to comedy. Again, as long as you have somebody who's kind of like-minded. One of my favorite people to bounce jokes off of is Lisa Holly. Lisa is her mind, and you just start riffing with each other, and stuff just comes out of you. And I are like that when we start kidding around. Stuff just comes. That's one way of approaching a punch up, is get with somebody and get some help.
Being a writing consultant. What is that?
For me, it looks very different. I know of writing consultants that simply get people, they give them this list of exercises, they give them assignments, you start with their outline, then they teach them the process. I'm a hand holder, which is why I don't do it a lot. Most people who come to me say, I have a book, I've always wanted to write a book, My first task is to determine, are you really a writer, or are you somebody who just wants to write the book? And that way I can deal with you differently. Someone who just wants to write the book, I'm going to have to handhold them because they're not going to want to do the work that it takes to write a book. It's more than a notion. Someone who is a writer, then we can get into the meat of it, what you're working on. I don't have to ploy you and get you to be a writer. You are a writer. You live, you wake up. That's one of my first. If you think about writing more than once a day, more than likely you're a writer. You know what I mean? So it's something that I do, again, as part of my creative portfolio. I don't really like it, but it makes good money.
So tell me why you don't like it.
It's like raising children. I don't like kids. I don't. I have them, don't mean I like them. No, it's like raising children. It's like
it takes a lot of care.
It takes a lot of care, and I'm at that age now where I'm at the get off my lawn stage. I don't have a lot of, but if I come across somebody that I really believe in them, I'm gonna do it. You know, otherwise it's...
So you're being more selective now.
I'm being
if you
very
do it, it's
selective.
Like, I want to enjoy this person. If I'm going to be in the trenches with them for a period of time, I want us to work.
Case in point, T.J. Mercer. Do you know T.J.?
No, I don't.
T.J. Mercer, the media maverick, maven. She is not a writer. She'll be the first one to tell you I am not a writer, but she is a 5-time best-selling author because I am her editor. You know what I mean? And because I've kind of taken her by her hand and baby stepped her through all of her books, and she just churns out these bestsellers as a result. But it is painful.
What advice can you give a young person who, or an older person who wants to write and wants to write in Hollywood? I would say, what are the first steps for them to start on that path?
Right. The inroads to Hollywood have changed. You know, it used to be standard, you know, pilot season's coming up, you know, you write some specs, you try to get representation, or if you have representation, you get your representation to get you some meetings, and you take your spec and you try to get on whatever. But the game has changed so much. My top 3 are, number 1, be versatile, back to that creative portfolio. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Have a comedy spec, have a dramatic spec, you know. Be willing to try different avenues. Also, have a thick skin, because get used to rejection, because it happens.
How important are specs?
I think you come to a certain point in your career, at least I have. My last spec was a Roseanne.
But in the beginning,
very important. It's your calling card. It's your example that you show that I can write, that I do understand what this process is, and I can do it. It's your calling card. It's very important. And it has to be pristine. It has to be really well written, have other eyes on it. I mean, just even typos and grammar, especially if you're a writer of color. Don't give them any reason, oh, well, you know, they can't even spell, you know, whatever. And so don't give them an excuse to turn you down, but make sure that your spec is pristine. Networking. Get out there. There's lots of organization of Black screenwriters. There's all these organizations and meetup groups that you can get in, because it's all about, this town is all about relationships. It's not just about who you know, but who knows you. And I hate that part of it, but it's the reality of what it is. You know what I mean? Every job I've gotten in this industry is because somebody knew who I was. I haven't had an agent since 2000, management, anything. I have not applied for a job. Every job I've gotten since 2000, they have come to me. Do I work all the time? No. But that's my road. That's the journey that I chose.
But because you made those relationships, people know to come to you.
They know to come to me. And then the last thing I'll say about that is to understand that your journey in this industry is not going to look like anyone else's. So don't compare. Don't compare your work. Don't compare your journey, because you'll stay frustrated and discouraged if you do.